idea of traveling changed. Now traveling is closely associated with tourism, right? Travel and tourism, right? And it is not mere curiosity, it is not knowledge production, it is capitalism, it is consumerism. Initially people started traveling out of curiosity. You have all these tales of Columbus discovering America, you have Vasco da Gama coming to conquer. So it was a kind of curiosity to know the world, to discover the world that people started traveling. And what happened when people started traveling and when people started discovering, or when they discovered the world? What happened when Europeans discovered India? What was the next historical happening? Colonization. Naturally, they came here, they saw the place, they wanted to start trade, they saw so many rich resources here, raw materials here, they wanted to begin trade, and they gradually monopolized the whole process. And also they hegemonized. When I say hegemonized, I mean they laid their dominance because they wanted to rule, they want to take all the profit, right? So this happened. So from initial travel, which was due to mere curiosity, slowly traveling became a necessity for those people who were later on identified as colonizers. And what were their purpose of travel? It was not just curiosity, being curious also, but they just wanted to have dominance over the place. And what did they do for that? They came here. Earlier British travelers were asked to record the details of their journeys, just to help the people who came after. And also there was a different sharp politics behind it. How did the British or the Europeans colonize us? Is it merely using military power? Is it using military power, or is colonization all about geographical colonization? Is it? No, it's also about making knowledge or creating knowledge about what is Indian, or what is this region, or making conclusions about the people living here. It will be more clear when I say Europeans came here and they say one of their claims is that all the people here were savages or barbarians or not civilized. It was their mission to civilize us. Okay, so they came here, saw the people, the places here, and they recorded their impression of the place. It is not the so-called reality with the quotes that they recorded, but their impression of the place. And the people at the place were introduced to the outside world through these impressions that the colonizers had, or colonizers recorded, which became travel records, or which we can also say as travel narratives. So they created a particular kind of knowledge about the place and people. Okay, so and this creation of knowledge was necessary for them, because that according to that creation, India was, or the place that we now identify as India, was labeled uncivilized, and they thought that it is their mission to civilize India or the place. That is why we call white man's burden. Have you come across that? White man's burden. What is that? The feeling that it is up to them to civilize us. So, travel narrative became a space, or travel writings became a space which was used by these very strategic organizing positions to create knowledge about the place and people. And creating knowledge about these place and people was very much necessary, because it is only through defining or creating or saying or finding conclusions about these people that they could rule or dominate these people. Suppose I am standing here and I am saying, you are not well versed in this particular field. Some, not just this field, any field for that matter. And I am bringing up conclusions about you. I am trying to label you. I am trying to define you. Okay, so you are there powerless when I stand here as a binary position, and you tend to believe everything that I say. Right? I am creating definitions and knowledge about you people there, students, as a teacher. So that when I say that you are such and such people, or you have you lack such and such knowledge, and I try to talk about it, what is happening? I am concluding about you. I am creating knowledge about you. The knowledge that you don't have awareness about some particular area. So when I create that awareness among you, it is easier for me to dominate you. That is a tactic the colonizers used. They came here, they created knowledge about the place and people so that they could colonize or dominate us. They made us inferior, made us feel inferior. Right? And travel narrative was a major field or an area which was used to create such knowledge formations. Okay, so that was how travel narratives, or that was the reality of travel narratives during the colonial period. Okay, and what happened? What came after? We have post-colonial era coming up. After 1947, you have this post-colonial era. And even though chronologically or calendar-wise we can say post-colonial era became swimming, there are a lot of confusions and debates regarding what is post-colonial. Is it mere chronology or calendar or the field, the positions that we take? But yet, even after independence, the travel narratives that came about India or on India, especially published from within India and from maybe published from outside, but about India. Even though post-colonial positions were there in so many outlook at the way in which it was done, but even then, writings by William Dafoe that you have worked yesterday, 9 Lives, the writer, and B.S. Naipaul. All these people wrote travel, are also identified as travel narrators. And even though their works were published after 1950s, their works had this kind of lingering nostalgia or a kind of commitment towards a colonial grandeur. They were not really free from all those constructs the colonization has given us or just stuck on us. They had, when you read 9 Lives, you will find, is the empire criticized there, or is it celebrated like a long lost past? Right? You can connect that. And this was same, especially, and B.S. Naipaul was more harsh. Maybe he just wrote about his own experience or his own perceptions of India. And Mark Tully is one of the writers who were different because he could identify the colonial gaze that was there. What is this colonial gaze? How the Western world or the colonizers viewed India. Likewise, I said, they thought that we are all uncivilized here. Okay, so Mark Tully and this colonial narratives always had this impression of talking about us. It is us who should talk about us, right? But they actually talked and created our knowledge and history, and they defined what is our culture and all. So Mark Tully was a person who was aware of this colonial gaze, who was a bit different. Okay, so today I will be talking on the travel narratives that were published in India after 1990s. So this is a broad background that I gave. How did this begin? As out of curiosity, that people traveled, they recorded. Then came the colonial period where recording and creating knowledge was a necessity to dominate us. Because they wanted to finalize, they wanted to conclude that we are so and so to dominate us. Then came post-colonial period where we were aware of this Orientalist. Orientalist means the East is like this, Oriental is like this. In the Western concept of the East. Okay, and it was made prominent, or you have post-colonial literatures, right? So you'll be familiar with Orientalism, a book by Edward Said, published in 1978. So with that debate came this realization that the Orientalism is the view or the perception the West has about the East. It is not true, but it is a constructed perception by the West about the East. So it is more rigorous. You need to read that later on. So after these, so I was just tracing the background with which it developed, and now I'll just focus more on the travel narratives post 1990s. And maybe you can, I just mentioned the titles, you can write down that also. And please do buy and read these books or ask your teachers to get them for you through your department library or college library. So 1990s is not a very, I mean it is something I can't say special, but it was that particular decade saw a paradigm shift in the whole world. What is that? 1990s. 1990s as a decade was a time when there was a shift in world economy. You have this globalization coming up. You have this neoliberalization, what we now identify neoliberal policies. All those things came up in the 1990s. So it was also a period when people started traveling, and I'll come to that later on, but the entire idea of traveling changed. Now traveling is closely associated with tourism, right? Travel and tourism, right? And it is not mere curiosity, it is not knowledge production, it is capitalism, it is consumerism, right? I'll come to that later on, but to begin with, so 1990s, I'm just taking this 1990s as a point because, as I said, what do you mean by historiography? Historiography, what is that? The writing of history, the process of the writing, graphy is right, it's to the process of writing history. So history, as you know, history writing is not an innocent or objective process. It much depends upon the power relations. I don't know whether I should define or make that more evident. History, what is history? Is it a mere recording of the facts? Do you record all the facts and call it history? What did you learn as history in your school textbooks? Pardon? What history did you learn in your school? Padicho? What did you learn? Did you learn the history of a common man, a farmer, a soldier? Then what? Emperors, kings, prime ministers, freedom, India. You learned Indian freedom struggle. And can you just give me 5 names from Kerala? You just know Nehru and Gandhi. Then you will say Lal Parbat. Then you have somebody else, right? Nobody else. Can you just give me 5 names from Kerala? This is a problem with our history. So now you know what is history. You don't really come across history. So I just want to say that history is always recorded, or is always, we have a saying like, history is recorded by the victors. That is a common saying. People who lose the battles, people who lose history, or people who lose their everyday, they don't have this agency to record history. History is always recorded by the powerful, the victors. It's always about big things. It's always about people who hold power. It's not about people who suffer or the victim. Now we have this war going on, Ukraine. What will be recorded as history? Is it the suffering of the common people or the power play of the dominance? We have this NATO, Russia, only these names are coming up, or only these names will be recorded in the annals of history, as history, as Ukraine war, Russia-Ukraine war. We never know the feelings of the people. It is never recorded. So history, as I said, is very much problematic, and we always need to approach history in a doubtful manner. And even the history that comes to you, the history history, that particular record of history that comes to you, needn't be true from another perspective. It will be a person's view or a group's view or the powerful group's view. It needn't be different. It can be different from another person's, from a Dalit perspective, from a women's perspective. It can be different. We'll have different versions of history. We have different stories to tell. But these different stories are never recorded as history. Okay, so this is the problem with history. So you should be aware of that as students. So coming back, I don't exactly remember how I reached here, but still, I was talking about post-19 writings. Okay, I was talking about historiography, right? So these four colonialist historiographies, because these people who wrote travel narratives during colonial period, the foreigners, they wrote it with a purpose. They wanted to create, as I said, a particular knowledge about India. So they wrote all those things, and that records became a kind of history for the people outside, because they thought this is what is real India. Okay, so all these colonialist historiographies, all those writings or records which were later identified as history of the colonialist period, they were questioned during the post-colonialist period. But as I said, in the post-colonialist period also, there were limitations. But after 1990s, we have a flood of travel narratives coming in India, or about India. And the major shift these travel narratives record are a challenge, or are the challenges that pose against these colonial historiographies and nationalist historiographies. So I will be talking about different kinds of historiographies, that is colonialist historiographies, nationalist historiographies. What is nationalist historiography? In Europeans, they left our country long back, and what is happening here now? You don't have a colonialist historiography, you have a nationalist or neo-colonialist historiography. After 1990s, you have this globalized world view. Okay, so is everything fine after independence? No. At the place where the colonialist propagandas or agendas perform, now we have nationalist elitist propagandas happening. You have this kind of, the power just shifted from Europeans to elite Indians. We still have all these caste, class, gender issues prevalent in our country. So independence didn't make any difference. So we just had the shift from colonialist historiography to nationalist historiography, but the conditions were same. And these 1990s and later travel narratives in many different ways question these kinds of formations of history or historiographies. I'll begin with one. I'll be just discussing 2 or 3 main points, because if I am going on to, if I just make myself elaborate, you'll be confused. So I'll be just focusing on 2 or 3 main points that I notice in these narratives. Okay. And as I said, these post-1990s travel narratives, they gave a different vision of nation, culture and history. We were talking about history. These 1990s and later narratives gave a different vision of what? Nation, culture and history, and also what is knowledge. So we have a different attitude. Now you have a different thought about history, right? Now you immediately realize that history is not objective or innocent. History is also created. You know that. Similarly, these narratives gave you a different outlook of what is nation, what is national borders, what is a feeling with borders, and what is culture and all those things. I'll just begin with a particular work. It is titled, it is a work by Vishwanath Ghosh. Have you heard his name, Vishwanath Ghosh? No. He's the most prominent travel writer in India. And his 2017 work, Gazing at the Neighbors, travels along the line that partitioned India. That is, Gazing at the Neighbors travels along the lines that partition India. For the very title itself, if you are familiar, you can realize, you can understand what is the matter. So this particular text talks about the idea of a nation, or the question, or in a larger context, it questions or it talks about or thinks aloud about the idea of border. We know Indian history, even when we learn or read Indian history, partition is a unavoidable presence in our history. Okay, you know that. And what are the things that you have heard about partition? How, if I am asking you, can you tell me 1 or 2 seconds about partition? What will you say? Or maybe not sentence, just a handful of words about partition. What will be the words that you will pick up? Crime.
Migration.
Migration, right.
Refugees.
Violence. Then politics. And how do you watch, or what is your stand about this binary India and Pakistan? How do you watch, how do you feel for Pakistan? Especially within our partition narratives, what is the role of Pakistan?
Rivals.
Are you in love with Pakistan? Why? What Pakistan do to you? So Pakistan, in all these partition narratives, you have this binary of the you have India on the one side, Pakistan on the other side, and in between you have all this bloodshed, violence, migration, refugees, all those calamities. This is the picture of partition in 1 or 2 sentences. But this particular text, the writer went to these places. And do you know the name of the line that divides India and Pakistan? Radcliffe Line. It is called Radcliffe Line, named after the person who was put in charge of drawing that line. It was a very hasty process. So this particular person, Vishwanath Ghosh, he is a journalist with the Hindu newspaper. Now I think he is in Calcutta. He was in Chennai for a long time. So this particular person visits the major points of this particular line, and he records the memories, the everyday narratives, the everyday thought of the people living there. For them, Pakistan is not an enemy. Pakistan is the field just outside their home. You wake up every morning and you see people, but you have these borders there, long borders with വിജനമായിട്ടുള്ള സ്ഥലങ്ങളൊക്കെ ഉണ്ട്, 100 meter ഡിഫറൻസിലാണ് ലൈനൊക്കെ. But still, they have a different experience of Pakistan, and there are instances where a single house was divided to 2 different countries, and there is a reference to this one particular courtyard where they had 4 homes. 2 homes were came under India and 2 Pakistan after this line was drawn. So how will they see each other as enemies? So in the text, there is a very good quote where the writer says, and he identifies the situation, the whole irony of this situation. And he says, I just read, okay, for people living along the border of Punjab, it was Punjab that was partitioned, right? Punjab, the Radcliffe Line is what it is, an imaginary line. They harbor no hostility or enmity towards Pakistan because they have a good look at Pakistan every day, and what they see is another Punjab. It's just part of their Punjab, where many of their ancestors lived before partition. Which should explain why the shrillest anti-Pakistan cries are always heard in places far from the border. So he's saying that you don't find these cries, you don't see that or hear that in these borders. Where do you see that? Places long away from this. Where do you see that? In cricket galleries. You see that in cricket galleries. You know why? Right? And again, you see that in Wagah border. Have you gone there, Wagah border? It is a border, and you have this big wall and a big gate, and you have these exercise. I mean, the parade soldiers exercise. Okay, I mean they just perform every evening, and they flag hoisting. Okay. So it is in that particular place you have this celebration, or maybe the opposite of that, of the borders. You don't find the experience of border in a real border. There you have common people living. There you have common people living and loving, or maybe surviving their everyday. The mood of the cricket gallery is not really present in the real border. It is constructed for many reasons, you know why. So you know it is mere politics. You don't find that in real life. So this particular text, what I want to say is that texts like these give you a different idea about partition. And there is the author also visits so many homes and ask questions and share and make the common people, the locals, share their experience. Maybe even though they may not remember their childhood, but they have these stories coming to them from their ancestors, their grandparents, the parents. So there is a very good sharing of these stories. Okay, so this is natural. So there is something. So this travel narrative record the common everyday. History here becomes the memory, the recorded everyday experience or unrecorded experience of common people. History is not the story of the rulers or their victories, but these writings like Ghoshes, record history in a different way. Record history through memories and through everyday experiences of the people living there. And I say memories because these stories are carried down the ages, right? So this is just one example that I gave you from Vishwanath Ghosh, and you have similar experiences in many other writings as well. Especially you have Pankaj Mishra's work, Butter Chicken in Ludhiana. Butter Chicken in Ludhiana that came up in 1995, I guess, 1995. It also talks about these borders and the larger question of defining a border. Okay. And there is another work by Pradeep, that is Borderlands, travels across India's boundaries. Borderlands, travels across India's boundaries. That also came up in 2017. Okay, so all these writings, all these texts give you a different idea of border. And that means a different take on history. What we understood as history, or how we perceive the idea of partition and the idea of partition that was given, or idea of partition that is being foregrounded by these texts. So what I want to say is that these texts provide you with a different vision, a different perspective of what a border, of experience of being in a border is. Okay. So maybe that is one that I want to focus on. And second point that I want to tell you is about the way the narrative has shifted. The shift in the narrative method, or the concerns, or the way in which travel narratives were conceived. We were talking about this partition history and all. Maybe that the topic is again mega, but some other writings that came up during the post 1990 period, as I said, it didn't talk about the homogenized India. Is India singular? Shh, please listen here, because don't disturb the people listening. Do you think India is a homogenized entity? It is multiple. diverse. Okay, so these travel narratives, a colonial text, often gave a singular idea of India. We know that. That is how they created knowledge about India, and they term us as uncivilized, right? So these new writings, they give multiple vision, or multiple perspective, multiple experiences, the plurality that is India. And they do, or these texts do this by shifting the method of narrative. You don't write about border, or you don't write about the idea of partition. Even in that particular text, the main theme is not partition. It is the person traveling across the borders. It is a person going and visiting the place, not just one place, but moving through the border, the east as well as west, both the places, right? So there is this another work by a writer called Shivya. She is an Instagram, she's popular on Instagram also. You may be knowing her, maybe you can follow her. Shivya. Okay, Shivya. The title of the work that I want to discuss here is The Shooting Star. The Shooting Star, a girl, her backpack and the world. A shooting star, the shooting star, a girl, her backpack and the world. This particular book came out in 2018, just 3 years back. And this particular girl, she was a software engineer, but she gave up her job to travel. She just, and at the present context, she has given up her permanent living also. She just has her backpack and she travels. And she has a laptop and she's a travel blogger. And she, and her economic resource, she attains that through her work in the laptop, maybe blogging or some other work. She doesn't have a home. She no more believes in this idea of a stable home. She just travels. So in this particular work, she talks about her experiences. That is what I want to say, especially I want to thrust upon the way in which this idea of travel changed. Often you travel to well-known places, right? What are the places you choose to travel? Especially in the globalized, the current world where we talk about linking travel and tourism. You travel to tourist spots, right? And you just go there, visit there, be there for 1 or 2 days and come back. And Shivya here says that she just negates all those things and she chooses for a method she calls, or maybe the genre identifies as slow travel. That she visits a place, lives there for a long period, gets used to the people there, interacts with them, and in the particular book she talks about her visit to South America, where she even learned Spanish. She went and lived in a home there, and she learned Spanish to interact with the people there. She went to a school there and learned Spanish. So she says that in the present, I am saying this because and these things give you a multiple vision, a multiple idea about what we conceive as India, or the colonialist or the nationalist historiography is conceived as the India. Because it is when these people travel to small places and go and live there, we get to know more about the pluralities that is India. So, and she also talks about the ways in which she links travel to tourism also. And these new narratives are locally based. They talk about local histories. They are decentered. They are also spontaneous. They don't plan their travel much ahead. They are just spontaneous in their routine. They just go. They just take their backpack. They may have a broader idea, but they don't have this itinerary. Okay, today morning I should be here. Tomorrow morning I should. No, they won't have that. Yet they are just spontaneous. That is the way in which current travel takes place. They just leave. That's it. And that shows that India, that is also a method of recording what comes to you naturally. It is not a preconceived idea of India or preconceived idea of Kerala or whatever, whichever geographical area. They are not visiting the already set itinerary. They are not visiting. You have this tourist brochures. Okay, you have all these written there. That is also history in a way, right? But they don't just visit that. They just go haphazard. And they are much organic and spontaneous in their travel. So that is that, and I want to say that it is through that or that particular approach also questions this homogeneous attitude or approach of the constructs of history or culture or nation we have. This again questions because the culture that has been recorded. So can you just imagine the details of a brochure about Kerala? What will be the pictures that will be there printed on a brochure? Kerala tourism. We have a Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, river, houseboat, then houseboat, Ana, Satya, food, Satya, yeah. Will it have a Baroda and beef? Will it have people working on the fields? No. Okay. Will it have all those workers, daily wage workers working in the construction company? Just imagine the pictures that are possibly, that possibly you can find in these brochures. It gives you a very monotonous or homogenized idea of what is Kerala culture. And you suppose if there are photos of men and women, what will be the dress they are wearing? Sari, Kerala culture എന്താണ്? സെറ്റ് സാരി അല്ലേ? സെറ്റ് സാരി ഉണ്ടാവും. സെറ്റ് സാരി ആണോ നമ്മുടെ ട്രഡീഷണൽ ഡ്രസ്? ആണോ? ഞാൻ എല്ലാ ക്ലാസ്സിലും പറഞ്ഞൊരു കാര്യം ആണോ? നമ്മുടെ നാടിന്റെ ഡ്രസ് സെറ്റ് സാരി ആണോ? പട്ടുപാവാടയാണോ? No, because it is a dress followed by the dominant elite, the Brahminical people, right? പാടത്ത് പണിയെടുക്കുന്ന സെറ്റ് സാരി എടുത്തിട്ടാണോ പണിയെടുക്കുന്നത്? ആണോ? അവരെല്ലാം ചോറ് തരുന്നത് സെറ്റ് സാരി എടുത്തിട്ടാണോ പണിയെടുക്കുന്നത്? അല്ല. So I want to say that this is the way in which cultures are formed, right? Just take Sadhya. Sadhya എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞല്ലോ. നമ്മൾ എന്ത് സദ്യയാണോ കഴിക്കുന്നത്? ഈ സദ്യ, how did Sadhya become a traditional food? It's vegetarian. Sadhya means it is vegetarian. Are we vegetarian as a state? No. Then how did a vegetarian food item become our traditional food item? How did it become our traditional food item? It is Brahminical. That's the simple answer. The high class food culture. The dominant class caste food culture. ചർച്ചയ്ക്ക് നമുക്ക് ഞാൻ പിന്നെ അവസരം തരാം. അപ്പൊ നമുക്ക് കേൾക്കാം. ഓക്കെ. സോ അതുകൊണ്ട് പെറോട്ട ബീഫ് നമുക്ക് ട്രഡീഷണൽ ആവില്ല. മത്തിക്കറി ആവുമോ ട്രഡീഷണൽ? മത്തിക്കറി കപ്പയല്ല നമുക്ക് ട്രഡീഷണൽ ആവേണ്ടത്. എന്തുകൊണ്ടാവുന്നില്ല? ഇതൊക്കെ ചോദ്യങ്ങളാണ്. These are the questions that you should ask, just like the questions you asked about history. So this is how culture is formed. This is how, so culture is also samskaram, what we identify as samskaram or culture, that is also not in us. It is also formed in such a manner with varying degrees of dominance or socio-political or economic dominance or the place of dominance. Okay, so in such a, in the travel narratives, you see people traveling to inner places or maybe to different kinds of places and recording different kinds of everyday life, not just their travel experiences, but their food patterns, the street life, the street food, and all those things of. So those things also get recorded as the realities of our place, of our country or state. It is not just what the tourist brochures or the history that has recorded as Kerala or India, but it is also about the street food, the everyday life, rituals, traditions, food, clothing, all those pluralities that gets recorded as India or Kerala, whatever it is. So in such a way it questions the homogenized. And then homogenized, what is homogeneous? Uniform, so it also questions that homogenized perspective of nationalist historiography. Nationalist historiography, India is a common space, so that also questions that. Okay, so that is what I want to say about the second point. How these narratives question the centralities of culture. Okay, and again, thirdly, I want to say, while questioning, I'll just give one more example for the small town visits. Vishwanath Ghosh has another book, which is his first book. Vishwanath Ghosh is Chai Chai. The title of the book is Chai Chai. Chai. Chaya. Chai Chai. Travels in places where you stop but never get off. Travels in places you stop but never get off. That was published in 2009. It is about some railway junctions. You know, railway is a way of India. Railway lines. Railways connects India, east, west, north and south, right? So this particular book is about some railway junctions. What is the speciality of Shornur in Kerala? It's a main junction. All the trains that need to pass through or need to come to South India need to pass through Shornur. You have so many junctions like that from southern India to north. There are so many junctions. So he says that this particular writer, Ghosh, is from Kanpur and he worked in Chennai. So he used to travel up and down quite often. And as a small kid also he used to travel from Kanpur to Bengal and all those places. And he says that he has always noticed these junctions where the train stops for a long period of time. Okay, but you don't really get off, but you can't escape those junctions because they are major stops and you stop. So these junctions, even though they are main junctions, they are never part of history. They are never part of history. So he thought that he will go and visit these places. He will get down that particular junction and live there for 1 or 2 days and get to know the town and the city. And he embarks on a journey where he visits all these junctions. He comes to Shornur also. And he visits there, lives there for 2 or 3 days and get to know the city more. So what is the importance of such narration? എന്ത് പ്രത്യേകതയാണ് അങ്ങനെ ഒരു നറേഷൻ നമ്മുടെ ചരിത്രത്തിൽ കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നത്? Indian Railways history കാണുമായിരിക്കും. But will that history ever include the history of these junctions? The people that have passed through these junctions, the experience of the journey, the experience of the larger halls, the culture that got interchanged, interacted and moved across, no? And when he writes such a book like Chai Chai, where the places where you stop but never get off, you are actually bringing these junctions into visibility. Shornur is coming, or we are talking about Shornur, or Shornur is getting placed or recorded in this railway history. The smaller junctions, the junctions that you overlook, you just don't actually bother to listen to or bother to convey yourself. So it is through these. So I am just saying this to let you know that it is through these smaller narratives, small narratives, or small journeys, and these are the ways in which the current or the present day travel narratives are recorded. It is not about something mega, homogeneous, big things or big universe, but it is about the smaller histories, the smaller realities, the smaller towns, the plurality that is India. And these are the ways in which the plurality is being recorded. Otherwise, they won't get recorded. They won't become part of history. Okay. And again, I just talk one more point where there are writings like. And again, I talked about sharing food culture, everyday life, etc. There are books like uh, Wanderings in Coastal Kerala. Wanderings in Coastal Kerala. That is one book which came in 2020. Then again you have another very important book, Following Fish. Following Fish. It talks about, or the narrator visits some major coastal towns and talks about the fish culture. Fish, the fish culture, or the fish as a dish that is being used, and in Kerala, we have കരിമീൻ, right? അതാണ് എൻ്റെ ഓർമ്മ. കേരളത്തിലെ കോട്ടയത്തുള്ള കരിമീനിനെ കുറിച്ചിട്ടാണ്. അവിടെ അത് കിട്ടുന്ന ഒരു സ്ഥലമൊക്കെ ഉണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ അതിനെ കുറിച്ചിട്ടൊക്കെയാണ് ആ ബുക്കിൽ ഓരോ സ്റ്റേറ്റിലും ഗ്യാസ് സ്റ്റുഡൻറ്. സോ എപ്പോഴെങ്കിലും നമ്മുടെയൊക്കെ റെക്കോർഡഡ് അനുഭവങ്ങളിൽ ഇതൊക്കെ വരുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള ചെറിയ ചെറിയ എവറിഡേ മൊമെന്റ്സ് വരുന്നുണ്ടോ? ബട്ട് ദീസ് റൈറ്റിംഗ്സ്, ദ പ്രസന്റ് ഡേ travel narrators record all these minuscule, minute details of life. അവരുടെ ചരിത്രം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ വലിയ വലിയ കാര്യങ്ങളൊന്നല്ല പറയും. Talks about very minuscule, everyday details of life as it is lived, as it is experienced. It is not as said by somebody, but as they experience it. They travel. These writers travel along and they write the experience. And these experiences, these memories later become histories. Okay, so this is the connection the present day travel narrators take. Just one more point, that is, there are other works like, you are familiar with the Northeast India, Northeastern India. What is the Northeastern? States ഏതൊക്കെയാണ് അവിടെ ഉള്ളത്? Kerala, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Manipur, right? And there is this work by Nandita Haskar titled that particular work talks about her travel in Northeast India. And I just want to say just one point about that work. You know, Northeast India, we are all familiar with all these civil confusions or political confusions and insurgencies that is there. It is always under pressure, always. Maybe so you always had so many issues, civil issues of the state, especially with the state. So this part, and you have a lot of indigenous tribes also living there. So this particular work by Nandita Haskar talks about, or gives you a different idea. Because when she travels, she meets different people and they give different idea on how they resisted this overall idea of being India or state. They are not much happy to say that they belong to India as a larger part. They just always assert their own identity. Of course, they belong to India. They are very much part of India, but they are often at war or at confusions or at kind of contradiction with the state. Their indigenous identities, their unique ways of life and living is always at war with the power that the state imposes on them. There is always this confusion that is present. So this particular text tries to focus or discuss or problematizes these concerns from the Northeast. So, and again there are other works where you hitchhike. What do you mean? That is again another style of writing that has come down. I said these writings always narrate their own experiences, right? So what do you mean by hitchhike? Hitchhiking. What is hitchhiking? Lift എടുത്ത് പോവാറുണ്ടല്ലോ നിങ്ങളെല്ലാവരും. ലിഫ്റ്റ് തരുമെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചു. That is hitchhiking, right? So travel writers or travel narrations or travel books currently are also records of such journeys. There is a work called Around India, across, not that. One Life to Ride is a motorcycle journey by a person, but there is this work by hitchhiking. I have Truck Day India. The title of the work is Truck Day India, a Hitchhiker's Guide to Hindustan. That was published in 2019. Truck Day India. So in this particular work, the writer choose to travel in trucks. Trucks travel throughout India, right? So he travels in those trucks to get a better idea of what India is, to get a everyday reality, everyday experience of India, the rural India, the urban India, through these travels. Okay, so that is also a way of recording what is India. So India is not what you see in your history textbooks. It is not what you see in the map. It is also about experiences. It is also about memories. It is also about all those places, minute places, small places that you visit. So these are the various positions that the current day travel narratives tend to share. The different approach to history, the different understanding of culture, a different understanding of knowledge. What is India? The larger knowledge. It is a different understanding. These narratives tend to give you the sense of plurality that is here. Okay, so these are the main points I want to share. If you have any doubts or clarification,